Porch lights at Stone Pine Lodge were the warm yellow kind, the kind that turned falling snow into something out of a greeting card. And I stood on the bottom step holding my daughter's mitten and looking up at the big front door like it might bite me. Mabel had her hood down even though I'd told her twice to keep it up. She was 6, and she had picked out her own dress for tonight 3 weeks ago. Dark green velvet with a little white collar because she'd decided green was a Christmas color and white was a snow color and you needed both. Over it, she wore her puffy purple coat that ruined the whole effect. And she did not care. And I loved her so much. In that moment, my chest hurt. "Mom," she said, tipping her face up. Snow was landing in her eyelashes. "Why are we standing out here?" I didn't have an answer for her. Not a true one. Not one that a 6-year-old should ever have to hear. 20 minutes earlier, my phone had buzzed on the highway. We'd come up the 105 past Wakefield with the wipers going. My husband Dean driving careful on the black ice. Mabel in the back, narrating a long story to her stuffed beaver. And the text had been from my mother. "Don't go up to the main door. Actually, call me before you come in. We need to talk first." I'd called. It rang out. I'd called again. Nothing. So we'd parked beside a row of SUVs with Ontario and Quebec plates, all of them nicer than ours, and walked up through the snow, and I'd knocked, and the door had opened. Not my mother. Not my brother. A woman I half recognized from a photo on his fridge. His fiance's mother, one of the Caldwells, in a cream wool dress and the kind of necklace you don't buy at the mall. She looked at me and then at Mabel and then back at me, and her smile did a small, complicated thing, sliding sideways before it settled. "Oh," she said. "Just that. You must be the sister." "I am," I said. "We're a bit early, I think." "Let me find your mom," she said, and stepped back inside, leaving the door open just a hand's width, enough that I could see the whole warm guts of the place. There was a fire going in the stone hearth, garland wound up the staircase railing, real candles in glass on every windowsill, and the smell of tourtière and cloves and somebody's good perfume. People stood around in clusters with wine. I counted without meaning to. 30, easy. Maybe more. There was a long table set for what looked like 20, and near the fireplace, in a soft red sweater with her hair done in loose waves, was my brother's fiancée laughing at something. And beside her, my brother, my little brother, the baby of the family, looking like a man who had finally arrived somewhere he'd always believed he deserved to be. He saw me through the gap in the door. For half a second, something crossed his face. It wasn't good. She made it. It wasn't even surprise. It was closer to annoyance. The look you'd give a coat you'd left on a chair and meant to move. Then my mother came around the corner fast and pulled the door almost shut behind her and stepped out onto the porch with us, hugging her cardigan against the cold. "There you are," she said. Her voice had that smooth, managing tone she used at parent-teacher nights and funerals, and any time something had gone wrong that she didn't want anyone to notice. "I'm so glad you got my text. Listen, sweetheart, there's been a bit of a mix-up with the seating, and tonight's turned into something a little more intimate is all." "Intimate," Dean said from behind me. "Quiet. I know my husband. That's his careful voice, the one that means he's paying very close attention." My mother glanced at him and back at me. "It's really just meant to be the two families now. Immediate only. Very small. And there just isn't a place set for her." She looked down at Mabel, and her face did something fast and ugly before it smoothed. "For the little one. Or, well, for you, honey. Not tonight." Mabel had been watching the snow. Now she looked up. "Grandma, am I not lighting the candle?" "There's a thing we do in our family at Christmas, going back to my grandmother's mother. The youngest kid at the table lights the first candle before grace. It's nothing. It's a kid and a long match, and an adult hovering with their hand half out in case. But Mabel had been the youngest for 6 years, and she had been waiting her whole life to be old enough to be trusted with the match. And 3 weeks ago, I'd told her this was the year, and she'd practiced on a tea light at our kitchen table until I'd had to take the lighter away. My mother crouched down to her level the way you do with kids. "Oh, sweetheart, that might have changed just a tiny bit." "What do you mean, changed?" My voice came out sharper than I meant it. "She's been practicing. She knows you have to wait for the match to catch before you let go." "The Caldwells have their little granddaughter here," my mother said, standing back up so she didn't have to say it to Mabel's face. "She's 5, and she's already in her dress for the photos, and it made more sense to cut your own granddaughter," I said, "without telling anyone. so somebody else's kid looks better in the pictures. Keep your voice down. I am keeping my voice down. And here's the thing. I was. I was barely above a murmur because the snow eats sound and because I have spent my whole life keeping my voice down. And that's part of what I want you to understand before I tell you the rest. My mother's face shifted then, and it wasn't guilt. It was something closer to relief, like she'd been waiting a long time for permission to finally say the real thing. Your brother is under a lot of pressure, she said. The Caldwells are. This is a big night for him, for both of them, and you know how it gets when you're there. There's always tension. There's always some little thing. He just can't have that tonight. He really can't. I stood very still. Behind me, Dean put one hand flat between my shoulder blades. He didn't say anything. He never steamrolls, never gets out in front of me. He's just always exactly where I need him to be. He can't have tension, I repeated. You know what I mean? I do, I said. I know exactly what you mean. And I did. I'd known for years, honestly. I just kept hoping I was reading it wrong. My brother is 4 years younger than me, and he is the easy one, the charming one, the one who never had to white-knuckle anything because things have always simply arrived for him. A spot in a program he barely applied to, a condo my parents helped with and called just getting him on his feet, a girlfriend whose family had a name. Meanwhile, I put myself through pastry school at night while I worked the early shift at a bakery in the East End. I'd carried OSAP for 9 years. I'd opened my own little shop on a street nobody believed in and made it work, loaf by loaf. My parents called that being independent. They said it like a compliment. But the compliment had always felt like an excuse. She doesn't need anything. She's fine on her own. It was the thing they reached for every time they handed him something and gave me nothing, and I'd let them, because needing things out loud had never once gone well for me in that house. We're going to go, I said. Sweetheart, tell him congratulations from us. I crouched down in front of Mabel the way my mother had, except I took both her mittened hands in mine, and I looked her right in the eyes. Hey, I said, you want to get a hot chocolate? The diner by the bridge has the kind with the marshmallows that come in a little jar so you can do your own. She studied my face. 6 years old, and she reads me like weather. Are you sad, Mom? I'm okay, Bug. Are you okay? She thought about it seriously, the way she thinks about everything. I practiced a lot, she said, not complaining, just telling me a true thing. I know you have to wait for the match to catch. You'd have been perfect, I said. Come on, hot chocolate. Dean took her other hand and we walked back down the stone steps into the snow, and I did not look back at my mother, and I did not look back at the door. I kept my chin up and my eyes forward, and I told myself I was fine all the way across the lot. I was fine while Dean started the engine and the heater coughed cold air at us. I was fine while Mabel buckled herself in and went back to her beaver. Then we pulled out onto the dark road, and I put my face in my hands and pressed until I saw colors. Hey, Dean said. He didn't drive yet, just sat there with the wipers thumping. Hey, she cut Mabel, I said. The words came out thick. She cut her own granddaughter off the candle for a photo, and nobody phoned me. We drove an hour and a half on the ice. I know. And my mother stood there and defended it. I know. He's never done one single thing for her, you know that? Not a card, not a birthday. And I keep showing up. I stopped, breathed. Okay. I stopped, breathed. Okay. I'm done. I'm done talking about it. You don't have to be. I am for now. I dropped my hands and looked out at the lodge through the back window, getting small, all that gold light, somebody's shape moving past a window. Just drive, I said. He pulled out slow onto the concession road. We'd been going maybe 4 minutes when Mabel said from the back, Mom, does Uncle not want me there? I turned around. She was watching the dark fields go by, her green dress bright against the gray dusk. Your uncle loves you very much, I said. Then why did he give my candle to a different girl? Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that aren't about how much they love somebody. This one's not about you, Bug. It's never about you. Okay, she said, in the way kids say okay when they don't quite believe you, but have decided to trust you anyway. Then, after a minute, I'm still going to wear my dress to the diner. Wear it everywhere, Dean said. That dress deserves a tour. She laughed, a small, surprised laugh. And I turned back around and Dean found my hand on the console and held it, and I stared at the snow coming at the headlights, and I was not fine. Not even a little. But I was holding it, and that was enough for right then. We'd been driving 11 minutes when my phone rang. I looked at the screen. My grandmother. My grandmother is 85. She does not phone people in the evening. She thinks it's rude. She thinks evenings are for your own family. She said this my whole life. She'd been at the lodge tonight, of course. It's her birthday weekend, this whole thing. The engagement got folded into it because that's how my brother operates. He's never met an occasion he couldn't borrow. She'd been sitting in there by the fire the entire time. And she hadn't come to the door and she hadn't texted. And I almost didn't answer because I did not have it in me to be told, gently, by the one person I still trusted, that I should let it go for the sake of the family. Dean glanced at the screen, then at me. Up to you, I answered. Where are you? Not a question. My grandmother's voice was not the voice I expected. It wasn't soft, and it wasn't sorry. It was low and very controlled, and underneath it, like a wire pulled tight, was something I had almost never heard from her in my life. She was furious. On the road home, Grandma. Where? How far? I looked at a road sign in the headlights. Maybe 10 minutes? Grandma, turn around, she said. Right now, turn the car around and come back. Grandma, I can't. I can't walk back in there and stand around while this is not about your brother's party. Her voice cut clean through mine. Not loud, just absolute, the voice she must have used 40 years ago, running her own business when the men didn't want to listen. I need you back at this house. Do you understand me? Not for him. For me. Trust me. And turn the car around. I looked at Dean. He was already slowing for the next turnaround. Something in her tone, that pulled wire control, lifted the hair on my arms. Okay, I said. We're coming back. I hung up. Turn around, I told Dean, and he didn't ask why, just found a farm lane to back into and swung us around toward all that gold light. Mabel, mid-sentence with her beaver, noticed the direction change. Are we going back to the party? We're going back to see your great-grandma. She considered this. Will there be hot chocolate? Probably not at this exact location. But I promise we find hot chocolate before bed tonight. Okay, she said, and went back to the beaver. My grandmother was waiting outside when we pulled up. Not on the porch, at the bottom of the steps, at the edge of the cleared gravel, in her good wool coat with snow already settling on her shoulders like she'd been out there a while watching for our headlights. She looked older to me in that moment than she usually let herself look, and also somehow taller, the way a person looks when they've decided to put down something heavy they've carried uphill for a long time. I got out. Dean got out. Mabel scrambled past both of us and ran straight at my grandmother with no hesitation at all, the way she always does, and my grandmother caught her and held her and pressed her face into the top of Mabel's head, and something in my chest seized. There she is, she said into Mabel's hair. There's my candle girl. She set her down gently and looked at Dean. Would you do me a favor and take this one around the side? There's a little path down to the lake. The neighbors put their dock lights on for the holidays. You can see them across the ice. It's a sight. Lake lights, Mabel breathed, like this was the greatest development in human history. Dean took her mitten with a look at me that said, I'm right here. And they went off around the side of the lodge, and then it was just my grandmother and me in the gravel with the snow coming down and the muffled party behind the glass. I owe you an apology, she said. Grandma, no you don't. Let me. She held up one gloved hand. I was in the back hall when your mother went to the door. I heard the whole thing. Every word she said to you. Every word. She paused. I didn't come out. I told myself it wasn't the moment. I told myself it would ruin his night, that I'd take your mother aside later. That has been the family disease for 60 years, and tonight I caught it too. She looked right at me, and her eyes were doing something I'd hardly ever seen them do. That was cowardice, and you and that little girl deserved better from me at that door. I appreciate you saying it, I said, and I meant it, even as it also felt like somebody arriving with an umbrella after I was already soaked through. There's more. She reached into her coat and brought out her phone, holding it in both hands like it was hot. She turned the screen toward me. A text. Sent at 11:52 that morning while I was doing Mabel's hair and ironing the white collar on the green dress and packing the car. It was from my brother to my mother. Mom, can you deal with her before tonight? I really don't want a thing. Tell her it's family and the Caldwells only, or the date moved. Whatever, just make sure she doesn't show. I can't have her making this about herself when it's supposed to be about us. And please don't let her bring the kid. The Caldwells already have their granddaughter on the candle for the photos, and it'll just be awkward. I read it twice. Deal with her. I was a thing to be dealt with the way you deal with a delivery or a draft coming in under a door. My own kid, reduced to the kid, a logistics problem next to a better photographing 5-year-old. He planned it, I said, not a question. This morning, he had Mom run me off. Yes, my grandmother said, and she just did it. Your mother has run interference for that boy for 30 years, she said. Tonight was not a one-off. It is the most honest thing she's done in a long while, because at least this time she did it where I could finally see it. She put the phone away. I want you to come inside. Grandma, I really don't. Not for him. Not for your mother. I need you inside because there are things that have to be said in front of everyone, and I am done. I am done letting things pass because the moment wasn't right. There is never a right moment. That's the trick of it. She looked exhausted and absolutely settled, both. Will you trust me? I thought about Mabel asking if her uncle didn't want her. I thought about her saying I practiced a lot in that flat little voice that didn't even complain. I thought about 3 weeks of a tea light on the kitchen table. Yes, I said, I trust you. She nodded once, took my arm, leaning on me a little, which she'd never once done, and we went up the steps and she pushed open the heavy door. The warmth hit me. The fire, the candles, 30-odd people mid-conversation, the smell of clove and wood smoke, the pop of a cork somewhere in the next room. A few heads turned. A few people smiled the vague way you smile at a stranger at a party. My mother appeared from the left almost instantly, and her face when she saw me ran through the whole sequence, surprise, then alarm, then the gathering up of composure. Mom, she said to my grandmother, the word clipped. What are you? I'd like everyone's attention, please. My grandmother didn't raise her voice. She didn't perform it. She just said it clearly, in the voice of a woman who is used to being listened to when it counts. The conversations nearest us stopped. Then the ones past those. The room went quiet in rings, the way it does at a party. The silence spreading out from its center, until even the little Bluetooth speaker on the mantel seemed to lower itself. In the hush, I could hear my own heart. My brother came into the wide doorway between the front room and the dining room. His fiancée was just behind him with a hand on his arm. His face, when he saw me standing next to our grandmother, went completely still. Grandma, he said. What she's not even. She's here, my grandmother said. Because she belongs here. Because she is my granddaughter. But because she is my granddaughter. Because I should have opened that door myself an hour ago, and I will be ashamed of that for whatever's left of my life. His jaw tightened. This isn't the night. I know you think that. She said it gently. I know you texted your mother this morning to have your sister dealt with. I read it. I know you asked her not to let a 6-year-old in this house because somebody else's grandchild photographs better. And I know that your mother, as she has done your entire life, did exactly what you asked and didn't ask herself a single question about it. The quiet in the room got a texture to it now, the kind where nobody is breathing quite right. The Caldwells stood very straight near the fire. My brother looked at our mother. Our mother looked at the floor. This family runs on a pattern, my grandmother said, turning now so she was speaking to the room, not just to him. We are kind to your faces, and we sort you out behind your backs, and we call it keeping the peace. I have kept that peace for 60 years. I kept it when my own mother did it to my sister. I kept it through every birthday and every holiday in this room, telling myself the uncomfortable things could wait. She paused. What I didn't let myself see until tonight was how much had been allowed to pile up while I waited. I saw my brother's fiancée take a small step back from him. I had a phone call this afternoon, my grandmother said, with my lawyer. I want to be plain about what I changed, because plainness is the thing this family has had the least of. My mother's head came up sharp. The cottage on Loon Lake, the one I have let all of you treat for years now, as good as your brother's. The one I have heard him already describe to the Caldwells as the place will summer. That cottage is not going to him. She let that sit. It's going into a trust. For the great-grandchildren. All of them. Held until they're grown, shared equally, and no one of you gets to quietly decide whose it really is over the heads of the rest. You can't be serious, my mother said low. I am entirely serious. Mom, tonight in front of yes, my grandmother said. Tonight, in front of. Yes, my grandmother said. Tonight. Because if not tonight, it would have been some other night after some other quiet little cruelty. And there would always have been a reason it wasn't the time. She turned back to me. And there's one more thing, and this one is just for her. She reached into her coat pocket again, and this time she took out a small, worn velvet box, the dark gray kind that goes soft at the corners with age, and I knew it before she opened it because I'd seen it in 100 old photographs. Inside was the ring. My great-great-grandmother's ring, a small sapphire, the deep blue you only get on the lake in late October. The one I'd been told, years ago, had been lost in a move. The one I'd believed was gone. This was never lost, my grandmother said. She didn't take her eyes off me. Your mother gave it to your brother 2 springs ago to give to her. A small nod toward the fiancé who had gone very pale. Without asking me, without telling the rest of the family. She decided your brother's wife would treasure it more than you would. I found out by accident in the fall. I have been waiting for the right way to fix it. Her mouth went tight. There isn't a right way. There's only this one. She pressed the box into my hand and folded my fingers over it with both of hers, which were cold and very strong. It goes mother to daughter in this family. It always has. It comes to you now where it should have come, and then someday it goes to that little girl down at the lake. I had promised myself, walking up the steps, that I would keep it together. I am good at keeping it together in front of people. It's a skill I built out of pure survival in that family, being the one who's expected to be fine with things. I was not keeping it together now. I wasn't sobbing. I want to be clear. I wasn't making a scene. But my eyes were doing what eyes do, and I let them. And for once, I did not wipe my face in front of everyone, like the leaking was something to apologize for. Into all that silence, the side door opened with a gust of cold, and Mabel came in stamping snow off her boots, cheeks blazing, Dean behind her. She didn't read the room at all. 6-year-olds don't, she just announced, to everyone. The lake has lights on it. And then she saw the dining table all set up and the long unlit candle in its silver stick at the head of it. And she stopped, and her whole face fell, very quietly, the way a kid's does when they're trying hard to be brave. My grandmother walked over to her, slow, and held out one hand. Come here, candle girl, she said. There's a job that needs doing, and I want it done right, and I only trust one person in this house to wait for the match to catch. I watched my mother open her mouth. I watched her think better of it. The Caldwell's little granddaughter was standing near the table in her photo-ready dress, and she looked confused and a little upset the way kids get, and Mabel, my Mabel, who'd had this taken from her 2 hours ago, looked at her and said, Do you want to do it too? You can hold the bottom and I'll do the top. You have to wait for it to catch. That's the most important part. My grandmother's chin trembled. She got them a long fireplace match, and she stood behind both of them with her hands hovering, and the 2 little girls lit the first candle of the evening together. And the whole quiet room watched, and nobody in it had the nerve to say a single word. We didn't stay long after that. There wasn't anything left to say in that house that hadn't been said. We got Mabel her hot chocolate at the diner by the bridge, the kind with the marshmallows in a little jar, and she did her own, and put in too many, and we let her, and she fell asleep against the window, before we hit the highway with the ring box in my coat pocket the whole way home. My grandmother phoned 2 days later, the way she said she would. She told me the conversation with the lawyer had actually started weeks before, that she'd been watching things stack up for longer than any of us knew, that the text my brother sent had only been the last clear thing she'd needed to stop pretending. The trust was real. It was done. The cottage on Loon Lake, the place I'd been told my whole life would someday be split between my brother and me, and that had been quietly drifting toward him for years, while my parents treated it as settled, was now held for all the kids, equal, untouchable. She also told me, that same phone call, things she'd never told me before, about the years I was working doubles and carrying the loans and being so proud of myself for needing nothing, how that needing nothing had been used over and over as the reason to give me nothing. She didn't dress it up. She just laid it out in that same flat, steady voice. And when I got angry, and I did get angry, sitting at my own kitchen table with the phone hot against my ear, she didn't manage me. She didn't manage me. She didn't smooth it over. She just let me be angry. That, I think, was the thing I'd waited the longest to be allowed to do. My brother got married in May. I wasn't there. My parents went. We sent a card because whatever I think of him, I still believe in being decent. And also because not sending one would have cost me energy I wasn't interested in spending. He texted me about 6 months after that. A long one, the kind that clearly took a few drafts over a few days. It said things like, I think I built my whole life on being the one who didn't have to think about anybody else. And you were always the proof that somebody could just be fine. So I let myself believe you were. It said, I'm not asking you to forget it. It was not a perfect message. It left out a couple of things it should have had in it. But it was real in a way that surprised me, and I sat with it for 4 days before I answered, and when I did, I kept it short. I said I appreciated him sending it. I said I wasn't ready to act like none of it happened. I said maybe there was some new version of a relationship we could build down the road, but it would have to be something new, not a return to the old one where I disappeared a little more every time so that everyone else could be comfortable. He wrote back just, I get it. I'll be here. I don't know what that turns into. I genuinely don't. I've learned not to decide the ending of things in advance. What I know is this. The night I stood in the snow at the bottom of those steps, holding Mabel's mitten, watching all that gold light through a door that was only open a crack, I thought I was the one being left out in the cold. I thought I was standing at the edge of something I wasn't allowed to have. It took me a long time to understand I was actually being let out of it, out of a kind of belonging that needed me to shrink, to be grateful for less and less, to hand my daughter over to people who'd already filed her under inconvenient. My grandmother calls every Sunday now. She and Mabel have a whole running thing about the loons coming back to the lake in spring. She came to Mabel's winter concert in February and clapped so loud for a 6-year-old in a row of 45 kids that the woman next to me laughed out loud. Dean, for the record, has been telling me for years that I deserved better from my family. I didn't always let myself hear it. I hear it now. The sapphire ring sits in its soft gray box on my dresser, except some mornings, no occasion, nothing special, just a Tuesday with the school lunch to pack and the shop to open. I take it out and put it on, and it fits my finger the way it fit my grandmother's and her grandmother's before her. And I catch it in the mirror over the sink, that deep October blue, and I think about all the women in all the old photographs who wore it. And I think someday it'll be on Mabel's hand, and then I go downstairs and make the coffee, because it's mine now, and it stays.